Every comedian knows the sting of a cooling laugh line, but few have endured a test as punishing as the one Carol Burnett faced in the summer of 1977. On that sweltering July afternoon, Burnett and her troupe set foot on an un-air-conditioned Hollywood soundstage to film Went with the Wind, an 8-minute Gone with the Wind parody destined to become television legend. Audiences still erupt in laughter at Carol's perfect Scarlett O'Hara riff and the sight of Harvey Korman's Rhett Butler flinging a bucket of schmutz with comedic abandon. Yet Carol herself has never watched a single second of that episode. It isn't because she doubts the humor or fears the punchlines have aged poorly. It's because every frame carries the weight of exhaustion, costume malfunctions, and relentless retakes that seared the experience into her memory as more nightmare than nostalgia. From the first rehearsal, the heat became an adversary. Temperatures soared into triple digits beneath incandescent studio lights, turning every movement into an ordeal. Carol's towering bouffant wig felt like a hot helmet glued to her scalp. The Civil War-era gowns, layered with petticoats and heavy crinolines, grew adhesive with sweat. Hair and makeup artists worked in overdrive, reapplying sweat, streaked lipstick, and resetting Carol's powder, white face paint after each take. Even seasoned grip and electric crew members, steeled by years of punishing schedules, admitted they were alarmed by the oppressive climate. And yet the goal was clear: capture that perfect moment when Carol's exaggerated southern drawl hit, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," and the dress exploded just so. But perfection demanded costlier sacrifices. Wardrobe designers rigged every gown with tear-away seams meant to burst at exactly the right second, but on take after take the timing misfired. Sometimes the dress tore too early, leaving Carol startled mid-line. Other times it clung stubbornly, forcing her to rip at the fabric herself and wreck her comedic posture. Each failure meant a painstaking costume reset. Stitching, padding adjustments, re-teasing the wig, and fresh makeup. By day 3, Carol's shoulders were sunburned from the heat lamps. Blisters bloomed on her heels where her character's dainty shoes pinched and slid with every exaggerated step. What looks like effortless parody on screen was undergirded by wardrobe chaos so intense that Carol later confessed it felt like a battle of dress versus flesh. The physical comedy escalated the ordeal. The bucket of stage gunk, intended as harmless prop schmutz, became a weapon of mass splatter in the hands of an unintentionally over-enthusiastic Harvey. One take ended with the schmutz slamming into Carol's cheek so forcefully she bruised the skin, rubbing salt into a wound already raw from heat exhaustion. The script called for Harvey to sweep Carol off her feet in a grand romantic gesture. But the first attempt jolted her back brutally, knocking the wind out of her lungs. To capture the perfect blend of giggle and gasp, the crew endured 12 retakes. By the final take, Carol's laughter was half relief and half pure exhaustion. Her tears were as much from physical pain as comedic catharsis. Behind the scenes, the clock was as merciless as the mercury. Studio heads demanded the sketch wrap before sundown, network sponsors watched dials for any sign of delay. Directors jockeyed for microseconds of lighting changes, camera operators streaked their lenses clean after every angle. Production assistants, once polite and composed, moved with the desperate urgency of people defying time itself. And though Burnett's legend was already firmly cemented by Emmy wins and sold-out theaters, no amount of star power could bypass the raw mechanics of making magic under crushing conditions. When the episode finally aired, viewers were none the wiser to the chain of calamities behind the scenes. Carol's performance felt effortless, her timing impeccable. Reruns replayed the scene of her dress bursting open, and the audience's roar of laughter rolled like thunder. Critics praised it as television's greatest sketch, and fans petitioned for it to be preserved in comedy anthologies. Yet for Carol, every time she glimpsed her sweat, slicked hairdo, or heard her own laughter echo from the screen, she was transported back to the hottest 3 days of her career. She remembers the searing lights, the sting of bruises, and the dizzying spin of costume changes more vividly than any punchline. Burnett has often quipped that watching Went with the Wind would be like reliving a bad vacation in full technicolor. She cherishes the jokes, but she loathes the replay of studio drama. There's no regret in her refusal. It's a boundary between performer and performance, between a moment in time and the torment that fueled it. By keeping that sketch locked away in her mind's vault, Carol preserves the sketch's magic without reopening wounds older than any laugh track. By the time Went with the Wind premiered on national television that fall, the legend of its comedy eclipsed all backstage calamities. Critics lauded Carol's dead-on Scarlett O'Hara impression and Harvey Korman's perfect Rhett Butler foil. Viewers wrote in droves, declaring the sketch a timeless classic worthy of every comedy highlight reel. Fan clubs sprang up, each devoted to dissecting every line, every wig flip, every tear-streaked glance. Syndicated TV hosts replayed clips on late-night talk shows, introducing new generations to Burnett's genius. Yet in interviews Carol gave after taping aired, she offered only polite amusement and gentle praise for her castmates, never mentioning the rigorous torture the crew endured. Instead, she deflected questions with a knowing smile and said simply, "I prefer to remember the laughter, not the labor." Behind that gracious remark lay a carefully preserved boundary. In subsequent decades, when talk show hosts or documentary filmmakers asked if she'd ever revisit her most famous sketch, Burnett's answer remained resolute. No, thank you. Some producers tried to tempt her by promising exclusive never-before-aired bloopers or restored original master tapes. Others offered to host a reunion special on the exact soundstage, complete with a commemorative champagne toast. Carol politely declined every invitation, explaining that watching the sketch in full color would reopen memories she preferred to keep sealed. "I've seen promotional stills, and that's enough gratitude for me," she once said. "I'll always be proud of what we achieved, but I'll pass on the playback." Director Joe Hamilton, who oversaw the original shoot, later admitted that he joked with Carol about drafting a certificate of non-viewing, essentially a private contract promising never to watch the final cut. Hamilton remembered how she laughed at the idea, then sobered up and said, "If I sign that, I must really be joking." He respected her decision, noting that many performers needed space to separate themselves from their work, particularly work that demanded so much physical and emotional stamina. Costume designer Bob Mackie, whose tear-away gowns played starring roles in the sketch, agreed. He recalled stitching seams in the small hours of the morning after frantic wardrobe malfunctions, waking to find Carol already back on set before dawn. "She never complained," Mackie said, "but I could see she was running on sheer willpower. I don't blame her for wanting to forget the pain behind the punchlines." In the age of streaming, it's easier than ever to binge every Carol Burnett highlight in seconds. Clips of Went with the Wind occupy special spots in algorithm-driven playlists, and tribute channels have compiled fan-edited montages set to dramatic orchestral music. Burnett's grandchildren sometimes catch glimpses of their grandmother's iconic florals plastered across screens, only to hear her admonish them with mock horror. "Don't you dare show me that sketch!" She'll insist, half in jest, half in earnest. "I'll be hiding behind every couch cushion." Her refusal has become part of the episode's enduring mystique, elevating it from mere television lore into something more personal, more guarded. It's as if the sketch itself has a private backstage life that the world is not invited to witness in full. Yet Carol's choice is more than a celebrity eccentricity. It speaks to a deeper truth about creative work and memory. Every performance, no matter how joyous it appears, is tethered to a process that can be messy, painful, and utterly human. For Carol, embracing that complexity meant preserving her emotional well-being. Instead of re-experiencing the thrumming heat, the bracing chemicals in stage makeup, or the frantic race against the clock, she reserves her energy for new projects, fresh storytelling, and mentoring young comedians who admire her legacy. "I want to look forward, not backward," she said in interviews about her post-1977 career. "There's too much laughter left in me to dwell on sweat and seam rips." In the decades since, Carol Burnett has woven a tapestry of achievements, best-selling books, award-winning talk show stints, and tributes from generations of performers she inspired. Yet she navigates that legacy with mindful boundaries. She'll watch fellow comedians perform the same sketch in tribute or attend live comedy festivals, where Went with the Wind is honored, always from the audience, never on the playback monitor. In her mind, the sketch exists as a perfect, untouched jewel. To polish it further with detailed memories of pain and exhaustion would risk tarnishing its luster. So she locks it behind a vault of gracious silence, allowing the world to celebrate its comedy while she protects her own peace. This paradox, of loving an art form yet refusing to revisit its toughest moments, resonates far beyond Hollywood soundstages. It reminds artists and audiences alike that the most brilliant creations often emerge from crucibles of strain. It teaches us that boundaries around our own creative lives are healthy and necessary. And it offers a final subtle twist: the greatest comedians, masters of joyful release, still honor the sanctity of personal memory. By declining to watch her most famous performance, Carol Burnett preserves a sense of wonder and space around her artistry, ensuring that laughter remains an unbroken gift rather than a reminder of the price paid to capture it. Throughout her illustrious career, Carol Burnett's choice to sidestep her Hallmark 1977 sketch has become an integral facet of its enduring mystique. Audiences at comedy retrospectives regularly petition film archives, streaming platforms, and college film societies for a public screening of Went with the Wind, only to discover that the sketch's availability is restricted by her unwavering request: "Please don't screen it around me." Yet this paradox has only sharpened the public's curiosity. As if the promise of a hidden behind-the-scenes saga heightens the allure of a show that feels timelessly accessible from every other vantage point. During Emmys panels, performers recount how they dared to show Carol an isolated clip to gauge her reaction. Each attempt met by her polite yet firm refusal, a demurring gesture that leaves admirers both amused and mystified. Media outlets have even run speculative exposés titled Carol Burnett's Greatest Secret, drawing traffic with promises of behind-the-scenes revelations. Yet every click leads to an empty vault. This boundary has become its own signature, a way for Carol to preserve personal sanctuary amid a career defined by open-hearted generosity and a hunger for shared laughter. In live appearances years after the sketch aired, Carol has demonstrated remarkable skill in recasting anecdotes to avoid awkward memories. At the Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony, she credited the entire comedy troupe for their collective brilliance and praised the crew for their dedication, never hinting at the punishing conditions under the hot lights. At award shows, when introduced as a legend who turned a Civil War parody into a touchstone of sketch comedy, she offered heartfelt gratitude without betraying any personal discomfort. Fellow performers have described how Burnett's off-camera presence glows with warmth and ease, creating an aura of trust that allows others to share their own vulnerable journeys. Even producers who once filmed blooper reels say that Carol insisted they omit extended footage of retakes, arguing that the final moments captured the essence of joy, and that anything more would obscure the sparkle of genuine laughter. Pop culture has eagerly repurposed every frame of Went with the Wind in vibrant memes and tribute videos. Amateur theater groups stage live renditions of the parody at fundraisers, complete with homemade crinolines and speaker rigs that mimic the original sound effects. YouTube creators overlay modern soundtracks onto Carol's iconic reprise of Calling It a Day and remix the moment her dress tears into animated GIFs. Even streaming platforms like Netflix feature Went with the Wind in curated comedy collections, almost as if its absence from Carol's watch list proves more engaging than the sketch itself. Carol fields messages from aspiring comedians who say her unwavering standard for protecting personal boundaries inspires them to set their own limits on exposure. She receives email from an improv troupe in Cleveland who told her they performed a silent screening for an audience of veterans, chopped Carol's lines word for word with sign language. When they sent Carol a thank you video, she replied with a handwritten note, "Cherry on the laughter, just keep me safely off the screen." Her refusal to rewatch the sketch echoes a broader awareness of mental health in the arts. In a medium that thrives on encore performances and retrospective box sets, making a conscious choice to protect one's emotional integrity can feel revolutionary. Carol's stance subtly challenges the expectation that artists must continually relive their creative trials for historical completeness. By refusing to reopen the door to painful production memories, she demonstrates that some contracts with the past can remain open-ended, granting permission to enjoy achievements without experiencing their hidden costs. Psychologists praise this approach as a form of self-compassion, arguing that maintaining boundaries around emotionally charged material reduces the risk of burnout, secondary trauma, and nostalgic melancholy. Her example resonates across creative industries, from writers to musicians, underscoring the universal need for self-care. In an industry where reminiscing is currency, Carol's practice stands as a powerful model for sustainable creativity. Looking ahead, Carol Burnett continues to enrich her legacy through fresh ventures and mentorship. When asked about her favorite sketches, she nominates episodes from the early 60s, such as the tribute to Muppet movie musicals and an original song parody that has never been replayed in full. These selections, untethered to trauma, are the ones she chooses to revisit and repurpose for new audiences. In workshops at UCLA, she coaches emerging writers on crafting resilient narratives, stories that flourish without demanding emotional cost upon their creators. Through her lectures and upcoming memoir, she explores themes of laughter as healing and discretion as power, inviting readers to reconsider how they engage with their own artistic triumphs and trials. Ultimately, her approach teaches that guarding one's inner narrative can heighten the mystery and preserve the sanctity of joyful recollections. Friending forward with unburdened joy, Carol's path reminds us that sometimes the wisest choice is to let a masterpiece live eternally in people's hearts. Even if its creator never presses play again, Carol's steadfast refusal to view her most celebrated sketch has prompted conversations across generations of creators about the necessity of emotional self-protection. While many artists eagerly revisit their past performances with renewed perspective, Burnett stands somewhere else, beyond applause and nostalgia. She embodies an idea that some chapters in creative history ought to remain unwritten in memory. This attitude reflects a profound respect for the boundary between art and the arduous labor that produces it. In Burnett's case, denial of achievement, but honoring the right to preserve joy uncluttered by recollections of pain. To watch went with the wind would risk reopening wounds. Instead, she preserves its magic by choosing absence over hindsight. Her example challenges the notion that legacy demands continual confrontation with one's own trials. Across the globe, fans have learned to celebrate the sketch without ever implicating Carol in their festivities. In comedy clubs, aspiring performers mime Carol's gestures while donning makeshift crinolines and sturdy shoes, mindful that the physical comedy must be executed without filming her. Regional festivals routinely include themed costume contests where attendees attempt perfectly timed wardrobe tiers using ribbons and clever snaps. Colleges host panels on comedic timing that reference the sketch's rhythm without screening the footage. Burnett's selective absence from these events transforms her into an iconic presence nonetheless. Organizers send invitations to her estate, and while her team declines on her behalf, they applaud the creative tribute. In her silence, Carol amplifies the audience's role in sustaining the humor. Every impersonator stands in place of playback, championing memory over footage and imagination over rewatching one actress's ordeal. Carol's own reflections on this boundary have become part of her teaching arsenal. When mentoring writers, she explains how framing one's own life story requires strategic self-editing. She urges students to identify which memories fuel creativity and which memories derail focus. She recounts the anecdote of the unair-conditioned stage as a lesson in balancing ambition with empathy for oneself. In her seminars, she invites participants to write their own certificates of non-viewing, a playful but powerful contract to avoid revisiting work that carries too much emotional freight. These documents are not legal mandates but symbolic oaths to preserve personal well-being. Young comedians find relief in such rituals, learning that protecting mental health can coexist with ambition. Burnett's influence thus extends beyond comedy to wellness practices that support artists' resilience. Industry observers have noted that Carol's choice foreshadowed a growing emphasis on mental health in entertainment. In an era when blooper reels and director's cuts are packaged as bonus content, her decision to withhold raw footage is countercultural. Archivists and historians have adapted, finding ethically sound ways to document artistic processes without coercing performers into re-traumatization. Some museums now label certain recordings as artist-restricted, indicating that viewing is subject to the creator's comfort. Film schools debate the ethics of compulsory screening, often citing Burnett's case as justification for optional retrospectives. Every lecture on sketch comedy includes a discussion of her stance, cementing her legacy as both a comedic trailblazer and a pioneer of compassionate archiving. This dual influence continues to inspire new policies in arts organizations worldwide. Meanwhile, Carol's present creative output blossoms unhindered by past pressures. She records podcasts in which she speaks candidly about current passions, gardening, painting, storytelling, without once revisiting her toughest filming experiences. A recent special on Broadway recounted her love of live theater, highlighting roles she eagerly watched and critiqued. She publishes essays that weave humor with human interest, celebrating moments of spontaneous joy rather than scripted perfection. Her memoir dedicates a single paragraph to "Went with the Wind," acknowledging its brilliance while swiftly moving on to stories of friendship and travel. Fans appreciate this brisk nod. It signals that art can be both honored and released. Carol's ongoing projects display the same warmth audiences treasure, strengthened by the serenity of unburdened creativity. Perhaps Carol's most enduring legacy is the gentle permission she offers to artists everywhere: you may cherish your work without sacrificing your peace. Her choice to lock away a brilliant performance underscores that not every triumph warrants replay. In an industry that often conflates value with visibility, she reminds us that wisdom lies in knowing when to step back. For Carol Burnett, refusing to watch that episode is not an act of defiance but of self-respect. It's a testament to a career spent crafting laughter, tempered by the courage to guard one's heart. In doing so, she ensures that every future giggle in her honor remains as pristine as the day it was first performed. Carol Burnett's deliberate choice to keep "Went with the Wind" off her personal playlist has inspired a quiet revolution among creatives who now publicly honor the right to discretion. In writers' rooms and editing bays, emerging talents gesture toward her practice when they choose to leave draft chapters unread after publication. The message resonates: some achievements are best left untouched, preserving their brilliance in memory rather than revisiting them on loop. This ethos has seeped into podcasting, too, where hosts encourage guests to withhold certain anecdotal episodes from restreaming, granting themselves the freedom to move forward creatively without out-tormenting rewinds. Across social media, the hashtag #ProtectYourMagic has trended, prompting artists to share stories of projects they completed and then consciously set aside, refusing to relive the last painful photo shoot or recording session. Burnett's quiet legacy lives on in these gestures of self-care, illustrating how her single refusal has broadened into a movement that values mental well-being over relentless content consumption. Even within Carol's own orbit, the ripple effect is palpable. Producers on her variety specials now routinely ask performers whether they're comfortable having every moment captured for posterity, giving them the choice to draw firm lines around their most vulnerable scenes. Costume designers across television reference her lore when devising practical garments that will neither trap sweat nor injure skin, a homage to the runoff from those 1977 heat lamps. Makeup artists have instituted protocols labeling particularly lengthy or taxing shoots as Burnett style, reminding crews to build in extra breaks and hydration reminders. Directors cite the infamous studio thermostat in post-production meetings as shorthand for demanding sympathetic scheduling. In these subtle ways, Carol's personal boundary has become an industry shorthand for dignity on set, a pact that human bodies deserve care above spectacle. The educational world feels these aftershocks as well. Performing arts programs incorporate modules on establishing healthy creative boundaries, explicitly referencing Carol's stance as a case study. Students draft emotional safety plans alongside stage blocking, acknowledging that they might choose to screen only parts of their final performances. Film schools debate the ethics of compulsory viewing, often pointing to Carol's example when advocating for optional archival review. Even scriptwriting courses adopt her mantra: draft it, deliver it, then depart from it. This curriculum innovation underscores the deep cultural shift that one woman's refusal has ignited. Proof that the power of art need not demand personal sacrifice beyond an artist's emotional threshold. In the broader cultural conversation, Burnett's choice dovetails with rising awareness around mental health and digital wellness. As binge-watching culture accelerates, viewers find themselves trapped in marathon replays that risk emotional exhaustion. Carol's decision offers a counterpoint: the healthiest viewing habits sometimes involve deliberate omission. Media columnists and wellness bloggers alike reference her as an early pioneer of mindful consumption. In think pieces, she appears alongside app developers who encourage smartphone downtime and social media sabbaticals, all premised on the same principle that less can be more. When streaming platforms roll out features allowing users to mute certain episodes or hide shows permanently, they echo Carol's unspoken guideline: Preserve the joy of art by guarding your personal experience. At the heart of this phenomenon lies a paradoxical truth. Carol Burnett's refusal to watch one single episode has magnified its cultural footprint rather than diminished it. By withdrawing her personal presence from the footage, she has encouraged spectators and fellow artists to inhabit the gap she leaves behind, projecting their own laughter and wonder into the unseen spaces. The sketch itself, immune to Carol's gaze, lives on as a shared treasure that belongs more to collective memory than to any one person's review screen. Instead of binding her legacy to repeated playback, she liberates it, ensuring that each viewer's first encounter remains as fresh as the studio audience's roar in 1977. Perhaps most poignantly, this practice reminds us that every artist wields the power of choice in shaping how their work endures. Carol could have capitulated to archival demands, appearing in reunion specials and director's cut montages, but she opted instead for preservation through absence. That decision resonates today as creators confront the pressures of constant visibility and documented process. Her stance offers a template for sustainable artistry: set your boundaries, honor your well-being, and trust that the brilliance of your labor will outshine any demand for replay. In an age of endless content, Carol Burnett's single act of refusal stands as an enduring testament to the sanctity of personal memory and the enduring power of a well-timed laugh untouched by the weight of recollection. In the years since Carol Burnett first declared she would never watch Wit with the Wind again, her example has blossomed into a broader cultural invitation to choose which memories we cherish and which we safely shelve. Her refusal, paradoxically, broadcast the sketch's brilliance louder than any rerun ever could, because absence can become its own kind of presence. By firmly drawing the line around that singular episode, she asserted a principle of creative sovereignty. You need not reenact every chapter of your own story to own its legacy. Instead, she invites us to honor our achievements as gifts. Moments of magic preserved in amber, rather than pressure, test them under the glare of replay. In a landscape flooded with highlight reels and director's cuts, Burnett's stance feels both subversive and deeply humane, reminding artists and audiences alike that some memories deserve protection from overexposure. This ethos dovetails with a growing societal emphasis on mindful consumption and mental health awareness. As viewers binge entire seasons of television in a single weekend, the emotional toll of ceaseless reruns can go unnoticed until fatigue sets in. Carol's refusal stands as an early beacon of digital wellness. She understood before many of us did that the healthiest relationship with art sometimes requires a little distance. When streaming platforms now offer "hide this show" features or optional episode skips, they echo her unspoken wisdom: you are not obligated to replay every moment of every performance. In practice, this frees consumers to engage with content on their own terms, honoring personal boundaries just as Burnett did on that unair-conditioned soundstage in 1977. Artists, too, have found in Carol's example a template for sustainable creativity. Writers draft non-viewing clauses in publishing contracts. Musicians designate certain recordings as memory only and refuse to revisit every studio take. Certificate of non-viewing, she jokingly contemplated with Joe Hamilton, has become a real conversation starter in writers' rooms and edit bays worldwide. This ritual of identifying work that no longer serves the creator's well-being promotes self-compassion and prevents creative burnout. In an industry that often prizes transparency and behind-the-scenes access, Burnett's gentle insistence on privacy asserts a countercultural truth. Sometimes the most empowering choice is to close the door on your own process, preserving joy rather than festering old pain. Audiences, too, have responded by honoring creators' boundaries. Fan conventions now include no playback zones, where performers can share stories about their work without being subjected to nonstop footage. Social media communities use the hashtag #FecProtectYourMagic to signal support for artists' control over archival material. Even comedy clubs sometimes stage tribute by imitation nights. The performers mime iconic bits without showing the original, creating room for homage without replay. In these gestures, Burnett's legacy ripples outward, fostering a culture in which creative boundaries are respected and celebrated rather than ignored. Her single act of refusal has become a shared covenant between artists and audiences, nurturing mutual trust and sustainable engagement. Perhaps the most enduring lesson of Carol's decision is the freedom it grants her artistry today. unburdened by the need to revisit old triumphs. She remains open to fresh experiences and untold chapters. Whether she's mentoring young writers, hosting intimate storytelling salons, or exploring new media ventures, Carol's creative spirit continues to shine unmarred by past aches. By choosing not to watch that one episode, she safeguards her wellspring of joy, ensuring that her laughter, and ours, remains as spontaneous and life-affirming as ever. In this way, her refusal does not close a door so much as it opens a window onto the next room of her artistry, fresh with possibility. In the end, Carol Burnett's steadfast boundary around "went with the wind" teaches a universal truth: the healthiest relationship with our own history is one of selective remembrance. We need not carry every memory forward, nor should we shrink from celebrating our achievements. Instead, we can choose which moments to replay in our hearts and which to let stand as unbroken treasures. Carol's example transcends comedy. It speaks to anyone who has ever created, performed, or simply lived through moments of triumph and trial. By refusing to rewatch that legendary sketch, she reminds us that legacy is less about perpetual visibility than about the enduring power of choice. And in that simple act of preserving wonder by refusing to revisit its most painful origin, Carol Burnett offers a master class in both artistry and self-respect.